Tena.
Good afternoon to the distinguished panelists, speakers, and all the participants who have joined the webinar from India. And a good morning to the participants who have joined from US. A very good evening to Mr. Gulati, who has joined from Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all to the webinar on direct benefit transfer for electricity to agriculture, Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme being implemented in the state of Punjab, an innovative and noteworthy pilot scheme for addressing water stress due to overexploitation of groundwater for agriculture. The pilot, supported by the World Bank, is being implemented by TERI-led consortium having IT Power and Punjab Agriculture University as partners. The webinar aims to share lessons on planning and implementation from the pilot project and the impressions of the distinguished panelists. May I now commence the first session by inviting Dr. Ajay Mathur, Director General TERI, to give his welcome address. Dr. Mathur, please.
Thank you, Mr. Saxena. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute delight that we are all together here to discuss the kinds of experiences and learnings that we have had from this program on direct benefit transfer of electricity for agriculture in Punjab. This is a big deal. It is the first time that we are looking at a completely different way of pricing and providing signals for efficiency in agriculture in this country. The direct beneficiary transfer scheme would provide us with the learnings on what is it that it takes to bring farmers into a regime where signals for efficiency, whether for electricity use or water use, can be passed on and therefore address the kinds of key financial and economic questions, as well as political and social questions that are put in front of us. What we will discuss today many things will not surprise you. It is clear that information is important, but it never struck me that we need to provide information on a regular and very short time basis in order to keep people's interest and in order to keep them as part of the program. The kinds of social variables, I must confess that it brought back to me the kinds of knowledge that farmers have, which is essentially generation-led knowledge. It is knowledge that they've got from their fathers, their grandfathers, and so on. And consequently, information on water saving practices in agriculture is something that's not easily available. We learned this many years ago when the Green Revolution occurred and the importance of extension workers was established. The fact that we need to learn it all over again tells us of the kinds of challenges that face us. In short, this is both more of the past, but also more of the future. And consequently, I welcome you all here, and I am sure that together we will be able to both learn from the past and figure out the kinds of strategies for tomorrow. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mathur. May I now request Mr. Demetrios, Practice Manager Energy in the World Bank, to give his opening remarks. Mr. Demetrios, please.
Saxena, and thank you very much, Dr. Ajay Mathur, for your opening remarks and for the help and the collaboration we've been having with TERI in these efforts. Let me first of all thank everyone who is connecting. I understand we have tens of people who are connecting and watching this, and we all live in strange times. And it is good to see that even during these strange times, we can still discuss and share experience on some of the most difficult problems that we have due to technology and around the world. It is a fascinating experience And I'm sure that whenever we get out of this health crisis in the next few months, we will all have learned better things about how to work, and we have kind of re-examined some of our fundamental assumptions about the way we work and the way we live. So thank you for connecting on this, and let me jump into the topic. The issue of power subsidy to agriculture in India has engaged Indian policymakers, the farmers, politicians, the power sector, the agriculture sector, the water sector for a long time. And the World Bank has been working with the government of India and various partners and stakeholders for quite some time. From the times when India was struggling with feeding its people to the time today when the struggle is not so much about feeding the people, but it is about preserving the resources of India, especially the groundwater, and making sure that the policies that have been developed and have largely resolved the difficulties that India has been facing with feeding its people. Now these issues are resolved. The policies on promoting agriculture, on providing electricity to the farmers for very low cost or no cost at all, have certainly created the agricultural revolution that resolved a lot of the problems in India. But now the question is, in today's world, in the 21st century, and we are about to enter now in the third decade of the 21st century, it is good to see whether the policies that were placed for very good reasons decades ago, are they still applicable, and how can they be modernized and come in today's world, and how we can deal with the stress of the groundwater and the stress that we see in the financing of the power utilities in India. So in this event, we will discuss the Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme, which is a scheme that the World Bank has been working with the Government of Punjab to pilot a new way of providing the subsidies with more direct cooperation with the farmers, involving the utilities and the government and agriculture universities in a different way. And I think you will all see that there are some important lessons to be learned. Let me thank some of our panel speakers. Mr. V.S. Sampath, the former Chief Election Commissioner, who has guided us through the design and implementation of this initiative. Mr. Baldev Singh Saran, the Managing Director of PSPCL until last month, who has shown incredible commitment and support for the pilot. And Dr. Rajesh Vasint, the Director of Hydrology in the Government of Punjab. Special thanks for his insights on water and agriculture. I would like to straight move ahead with my two colleagues, Kavita Saraswat and Mohinder Gulati, who will now present the scheme in more detail. We have been running this for some time now, initially for 5 feeders, then expanded to more than 100, almost 250 feeders, and we have learned some, I believe, significant lessons. And this is what we would like to share with everyone as the Government of India is contemplating new policies to deal with these matters. So thank you very much. I will pass it on now to my colleagues Kavita Saraswat and Mohinder Gulati to go ahead with their presentation, and then we will have more discussion with our panelists. Thank you.
Dimitrios, Mr. Venu Prasad, CMD of PSPCL, has just joined.
So thank you very much, Mr. Dimitrios. So now, may I now request Mr. Venu Prasad, CMD PSPCL, who has been a champion of the scheme from the very beginning in various capacities, to give his opening remarks. Mr. Venu Prasad, please.
Good evening, everybody. Is it audible? Hello.
Yes, Mr. Venu Prasad, you are audible.
Yes, sir. We can see, we can hear you, but we can't see you, sir. If you can start your camera.
Okay. Now it is okay?
Yes, sir. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, everybody. As you all know, Punjab is basically agrarian state. Roughly about 1.5% of India's geographical area. Punjab is contributing roughly 17% of country's wheat and 13% of rice production. Apart from this, Punjab's contribution to central pool buffer stocks through FCI is roughly about 31% in case of rice and 38% in case of wheat. But in the process, what we have lost is groundwater. Over a period after Green Revolution, Punjab government intensified cropping pattern. As a result of this, now 85% of our blocks are overexploited. As a result, every year groundwater is going down, and thereby farmers, one, they are re-deepening their tube wells every year, and as a result of this, the consumption of power also increasing year on year. Now at present, roughly about 25% of our total consumption is going towards agriculture sector. And in the state of Punjab, roughly we have about 14.5 lakh tube wells, that is 1.5 million tube wells. And the consumption is almost doubled in the last 15 years. And it indicates the groundwater is going down, and the tube well size and the pump size is also increasing every 3 years or 4 years. As a result of this, now Government of Punjab is roughly paying 6,800 crore rupees of subsidy every year. So in short, the one is payment of subsidy over a period of time in a long run, it is not sustainable, because for state government also paying roughly about 5 to 600 crores every month, roughly our one third of GST and VAT revenues are going towards power subsidy. This is one. Second is our groundwater is also going down because of over exploitation of water. Because when now at present we are giving roughly 8 hours per day to farmers. Whenever any product is free, we tend to overuse. As a result of this, even if it is raining, many farmers they tend to operate tube wells because there is uncertainty also. Previously, there was more uncertainty. At present, as Punjab being a power surplus state, the uncertainty has reduced to a great extent. But even then, also farmers tend to use motors to the fullest capacity, whether water is required, whether moisture is required, whether it is going to rain tomorrow or not. He's not bothered. Whenever the tube well is, or whether whenever the electricity is available, he is going to switch off power connection. As a result, there is a over exploitation of groundwater, and the power consumption is also increasing year on year. So keeping this in view at this background, we started direct benefit DBTE in agriculture. This we named it Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao. I think my subsequent speakers, they are going to explain the scheme details in detail. We started about 2 years back as a pilot project on 5 feeders. As a result of this, the main nutshell is for every feeder, we have fixed a amount. So these many units, entitlements, farmers are going to get. If you consume more water beyond these units, you need not pay to the Punjab government. But if you consume less, we can pay you. So as a result of this, we are encouraging more savings. So suppose if there is, because of rainfall or because of his real savings, if required power is available for 8 hours, if he is using only save power, and as a result of this, he can earn money also. Now what we are paying is, for every unit what he is going to be saved, we are paying him about 4 rupees per unit. So as a result of this, roughly as of today, we have paid about 60 lakh rupees to the farmers. Now in phase 2, we in June 19th last year, we extended this scheme to 250 feeders as there is in 11 districts, and about consumers is about 52% of our consumers are available under these feeders. So as of today, about 15 to 20 percent of farmers, they have expressed their positive signal towards this scheme. But today, enrollment is only 5%. But we are hopeful because of Corona this year, we lost time and we are unable to contact farmers, unable to convince farmers. The mobility of our extension workers was restricted. So the enrollment is definitely a little bit on lower side, but over a period of time, we are confident the enrollment percentage will increase. And once awareness is there, then farmers are convinced, then this scheme is going to be replicated in the entire state. This is in nutshell I wanted to tell, but definitely this is a good scheme, and World Bank is helping us, JPAL is helping us. They are monitoring this scheme on day-to-day basis. Our agriculture department has established too many um, demonstration plots. One is control, another is a normal plot. So they are going to demonstrate the effect of savings of water on crop yield, groundwater depletion, and the best practices, agronomic practices. They are going to demonstrate to the farmers. And we are putting AMR meters on these farmers motors, so that farmers can really, they will come to know how much saving they are making by using reduced uh, energy levels. So day to day information they can get it, and monthly if there is any saving, they are getting WhatsApp messages, SMS messages. So that is very encouraging, and it is what implementation side, it is what try for any other state. They can also try DBT, they can also try this type of model, or they can improve upon it. But definitely it is going to give better results over a period of time. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Venugopal. Now I think we start with the session number 2. May I now request Mr. Mohinder Gulati and Mrs. Kavita Sauraswat from the World Bank side to give the presentation.
Okay, by the time the presentation comes on the screen, so let me start. Thank you very much, Mr. Saxena, and thank you very much, Mr. Venu Prasad, Mr. Dimitrios, and also Dr. Ajay Mathur. And thanks a lot to all the participants. I see a huge number of participants who have plugged in. So it's great to see such a active participation. Most of you are familiar with this Nexus, which is the challenge of farm power subsidy, the groundwater depletion, and the emerging threat to water security. So this virtuous nexus between electricity, groundwater irrigation, which led to green revolution, and the agriculture, that is a virtuous nexus which led to the food security that we have today, when we have a stock of 73 million tons, which is 3 times what is needed as a strategic and operational reserve for India, which is about 21 million tons. So therefore, we have achieved food security, but this food security obviously has come at a very high cost to the water security, energy security, and also the fiscal burden. So let me step back a little bit and take a more national view and see as to what is the context in which we are grappling with this challenge of electricity, water, and agriculture nexus. 70 million hectares of cultivated land in India. It's about 100 is irrigated. So 70 million hectares of cultivated land in India is irrigated, 2/3 of which is irrigated with groundwater. 85% of the groundwater that is extracted is used for agriculture. So that tells you the close linkage between agriculture and groundwater. 85% of the blocks in India which are critical or overexploited are in just 9 states in peninsular India, 9 large states in peninsular India. And in these very states, the electricity consumption varies from 15 to 40%, but more of 25 to 40%. So that is the level of electricity consumption for extracting groundwater for the purpose of irrigating agriculture, which has led to food security. So that is the kind of nexus that you see between these three. And that's why the solutions that we talk about have to look at not just one sector, but these solutions have to be cross-sectoral. And we have to look at the cross-sectoral linkages and as to see how we can create incentives and disincentives in different sectors to be able to achieve this resource economy or the resource conservation that has become so critical. On the financial side, the farm power subsidy has increased to 91,000 crores. As Mr. Venu Prasad said, that it has become double in the last 15 years, and now they're paying about 7,000 crores. So the national level farm power subsidy is about 91,000 crores, which comes to about 13,000 rupees per hectare. If you take 7 crore hectares and 91,000 crore, that's about 13,000 per hectare. And the distribution sector, power distribution sector, is financially distressed. That's not something which is hidden and everybody knows about it. So that is the kind of context in which we were searching for solutions as to what can be done to address this concern. Why the policies, it is difficult to modify or change these policies because of the gridlock into which the competing interests have got locked in. So let me talk a little bit about that. Yes, can we go to the next one? Yeah. So if you see the rural households, which is about 65% of the population of India, their average monthly income is only 9,000 rupees, of which only half comes from agriculture. So not only the linkages between electricity, groundwater, and agriculture, but this is the crux, that the rural households' income from agriculture is only 4,500 rupees a month. And the rural-urban income gap is about 12 times. And if this status quo continues, if these policies continue, then this will grow to about 18 times, which is unsustainable, which is socially undesirable, and which is also economically unsustainable. So any solution has to take into account these ground realities. And these ground realities are that the farmers are reluctant to give up subsidized power, as all of us would be, and that's human nature. If we get some subsidy, then obviously we also would want to keep it. It is unpopular to charge tariff for the farm power. And the rural prosperity, as everybody has said before, is largely driven by irrigation economy, which is groundwater dependent. Can we go to the next one, please? Yeah. Okay. So therefore, in this context, we said, okay, what is it that can be done? And therefore, Punjab designed this scheme, the Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao. The objective of the scheme is to provide incentive to the farmers to use water and energy efficiently and without increasing the farmers' production risk. The boundary conditions that we kept in mind for the scheme, one is that the public policy choice of free electricity cannot be changed. That will remain unchanged. Free power will continue. The focus is not really on subsidy. The focus is on improving the efficiency of delivery of electricity and efficiency of consumption by the farmers. That is how you're trying to change that, realign those incentives. That was the boundary condition number one. The second boundary condition, that the agricultural diversification is not likely to happen that quickly in the near future, and the farmers are unlikely to shift to less water intensive crops, also because of the minimum support price that they have, and also the public procurement. So therefore, those are the boundary conditions in which this objective had to be met. Next one, please. Yeah. So therefore, in this scheme, as Mr. Venu Prasad also said, there are 4 key elements of this scheme. One, that the subsidy is denominated in kilowatt hours. They get 4 or 6 or 8 hours of supply today. That continues, but the subsidy is denominated in kilowatt hours per month per horsepower for each feeder that is averaged on feeder based on the past consumption. This is seasonally adjusted. For the paddy season, which is the main season, this is much higher. This is higher, and for the non-paddy season, the allocation per month is lower. So therefore, that is how the subsidy is denominated. Second, They continue to get free power, but if they save from their allocation, they get 4 rupees a kilowatt hour. That is transferred directly into the bank account, and the excess consumption is not charged. Previously, the farmers were not metered. They have to obviously agree to be metered, so then only you can measure their consumption. And the power company PSPCL, whose chairman you would hear in the panel discussion, are installing smart meters. And also an added thing was that the farmers on the DBTE feeders are given priority access to agriculture schemes, government's agriculture schemes, soil and water conservation schemes, and horticulture schemes. Next one, please. Yeah, next one. Okay, so why was it so difficult to shift from the current system of free power or concessional tariff to the DBTE? One, that the farmers assume that this free or subsidized electricity, since it comes from a government power company, it is perceived as a public good. Over a period of time, this has come to be perceived as an entitlement. So it is very hard to change that perception and that expectation. Second problem is that in the rural areas, the metering, billing, and collection is not very robust, and therefore, if you have to meter the consumption, then metering, billing, collection being in the condition in which it is, it was difficult to launch that scheme without setting this system in place. So therefore, Punjab considered 3 models and then decided the model which we will explain shortly. Yes, next one, please. Okay. So we considered 3 models. One is the full cost tariff model. Second is a concessional tariff model. And the third is a cash incentive model, which is a Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme. In all these models, you have to determine the allocation. Allocation in kilowatt hours per horsepower or per month or per hectare per month, whichever way you go. So you define the allocation of electricity for the farmers. The difference is in the terms of upfront cash transfer. So in case of full cost tariff model, the upfront cash that has to be paid to the farmer, which is a DBTE scheme that has been recently announced by Government of India in the recent months. So that is the scheme, which is that you transfer the cash upfront to the farmer at full cost, and then the farmer has to pay. That is the scheme. So therefore, in the first model, the allocation is multiplied by the difference between the full cost tariff and the subsidized tariff. That is the upfront cash transfer to the farmer. In the second case, it is the allocation multiplied by the subsidized tariff. That is the amount of cash that is transferred. And in the third case, there is no upfront payment. The tariff that you charge the farmer, in the first case, it is full cost. In the second case, it is concessional tariff for the allocated consumption. But if the farmer consumes more than the allocation, then the farmer has to pay full cost. While in case of Punjab scheme, there is no tariff, and therefore there is no charge for the consumption. The incentive obviously is at the rate of full cost tariff in the first, but subsidized in the case of second. And there is no incentive linked to tariff in case of Punjab. Incentive can be decided by the government, whatever they think is attractive for encouraging the farmer to save water and electricity. So the scheme is completely de-linked from tariff. However, the Punjab model can also be replicated in other states where they may have tariff, and the design can be tweaked and adjusted to some extent. Next one, please. Next, yeah. Okay, so in this, all the schemes would require obviously a metering and billing and collection, except in case of Punjab. But 2 things I would like to point out here, highlight here for your attention. One, that at the feeder level, energy accounting becomes very critical to ensure the financial integrity of the scheme. Because now the farmers can get a high amount of cash by showing less consumption, the motivation for malfeasance will go up. There could be incentive and motivation for bypassing the meter to show savings and therefore be able to get cash. So therefore, the energy accounting at the feeder level becomes absolutely critical for maintaining the financial integrity of the scheme. Second, that the cash flow requirements from the government and the company. In the first case, the very high amount of cash would be needed for upfront payment to the farmer. In the second model, which is concessional tariff model, since the upfront the cash payment is at a concessional tariff, so you need a lesser amount of cash. But in the third case, which is Punjab model, no cash need be paid upfront, so therefore there is no cash flow burden as such. The communication about the schemes is absolutely critical. That becomes very important because in the first two cases, which is a full cost and the concessional tariff model, you have to explain to the farmer why is it that you are charging them unsubsidized tariff or the high full cost tariff, which means the farmers can perceive this as a withdrawal of subsidy. Instead of 50 paise or 1 rupee, if you tell them that you'll be charged 6 rupees, it becomes very difficult to communicate that you are first getting cash and that is why you are paying 6 rupees. So the communication about the scheme that this is not amounting to withdrawal of subsidy or charging them high tariff becomes very, very difficult and very, very complex in the first two cases. In case of Punjab, there was no tariff. So therefore, all that you had to explain was what is the design of the scheme, how will it work, how much will they get for saving, and how to enroll. So the communication was much easier and less sensitive. Next one. So let me just try to explain that through a model which will actually make it more clear. So therefore, let's take an example that a farmer is consuming 250 kilowatt hours a month. Full cost tariff is 6 rupees, which is what her regulator has decided. The subsidized tariff which the government is charging is only 1 rupee, and the Punjab incentive is 4 rupees a kilowatt hour. So those are the assumptions. Now what happens in the four models, first three models that you heard, full cost and concessional tariff and the cash incentive, which is a Punjab model, I have also added the fourth model, which is the Punjab model. In case of instead of a free power, that if there is a, let us assume a 1 rupee tariff is being charged, how can Punjab model be adapted to that situation? So before the DBTE, farmer was paying 250 rupees for 250 kilowatt hours in the first two cases and also the last case. So that is the bill farmer is paying before the DBTE. Now upfront payment in the first case will be 1250 rupees. That is what the utility will have to transfer to the farmer. While in the second model, it is only 250 rupees. While in the other two models, the upfront payment is 0. You don't have to pay any cash. If the farmer continues to use only 250 kilowatt hours, no change. You see the red in the third line item, base case, the net cost remains exactly the same as it was before DBTE. So no change in consumption, no additional cost or benefit to the farmer. However, the situation changes when the farmer becomes more efficient. In scenario 1, if the farmer uses only 200 kilowatt hours instead of 200, in the first case, which is a full cost, the benefit to the farmer is 300 rupees. That is a net saving to the farmer. In the second case, concessional tariff, also the farmer gets 300 rupees. While in case of Punjab, they get free power, bill payment, but for saving 50 kilowatt hours, they get 200 rupees. And same thing in the cash incentive model. In that also, in the fourth model, they get 250 rupees. But let's assume that the farmer actually is not efficient and consumes more. There's a huge disincentive for higher consumption, which is instead of 250 kilowatt hours, if the farmer consumes 300 kilowatt hours, look at the cost. In the full cost tariff model, the cost to the farmer would be 550 rupees as against 250 or 300 rupees that he would have paid. So there's a huge incentive for saving and huge disincentive for excess consumption. While in case of concessional tariff model, it will be 300 rupees. In case of Punjab, for excess consumption, there is no charge. And in case of a variant of Punjab model, again, the net cost is 200 rupees. So therefore, what it shows is that there are these different models depending on the local context and depending on what you think is feasible to explain to the farmer and what will be acceptable to the farmer and your objectives, you can actually choose the design. And therefore, we felt that, and Punjab rightly decided with this model of cash incentive, which they felt was easy to explain to the farmers and start getting in gradually in some amount of behavior change, demonstrate to the farmers that it is possible, that it is beneficial for them, that they will not be hurt, and that they can actually benefit from it. So when you start demonstrating that, then gradually the behavior change starts. So therefore, we thought that was something which will be politically, or which will also be from a farmer's point of view, more easily acceptable and more easy to administer. So therefore, that is the model that Punjab has been implementing for the last 2 years. What is the outcome and the experience of that? I'll hand over this to Kavita ji. She will walk you through the implementation experience, outcomes, and what are the lessons learned. Kavita ji, back to you.
Thank you, Mohinder ji. I will now discuss the experience of Punjab in a more detailed way. But just a little bit of the technical context first. In Punjab, the agriculture feeders are separated from the other feeders, and they are metered at the substation level through feeder energy meters. Agriculture consumers get free supply and no bills are raised, as has already been mentioned. Now, in June 2018, Punjab rolled out the first phase of the scheme, as Mr. Prasad said earlier, on 6 feeders. This covered 940 consumers, and the progress as on date is that around 31% enrollments are there, and these enrolled farmers have saved almost 48% of their electricity allocation, and also the on-farm water consumption has reduced. Those savings are visible, and how we have been able to measure these savings, I will explain slightly later. In 2019, Punjab rolled out the scheme on 250 more feeders in 11 water-stressed districts of Punjab. And this covers more than 51,000 agriculture consumers. Enrollments have reached around 3.5% as of now. Now, as a part of this scheme implementation, there were certain activities that the DISCOM has carried out, which are very specific to the scheme and which are a departure from the usual business scenario of a distribution company. During scheme launch, a very intense communication campaign was carried out by the PSPCL officials. Then CMD of PSPCL, Mr. Sran, who is also present today and he will be speaking in the panel discussion, he issued personal appeal letters to each of the 900 odd farmers which were covered under the scheme. Several community meetings were organized by PSPCL along with the agriculture officials and the Punjab Agriculture University. The World Bank and TERI provided support through field resources. Posters were prepared, street plays were held, wall paintings were made, and also one-on-one communication with farmers was carried out to explain the scheme and its benefits to the farmers. Based on the questions that were being asked during the launch phase, we prepared a standard frequently asked questions document, FAQs, and then these were shared with all the officials so that the messaging from the state is consistent to all the farmers. There were several apprehensions from the farmers. Some farmers felt that if the bank account details are shared with the government would be able to take money out from their account also. And then the most common apprehension was related to metering. Many farmers felt that metering was the first step to billing. And for this, a lot of convincing was required from PSPCL officials, and especially those officials who had local connects in that area and who were regarded as reliable officials, to say that no, the government has no plans to do to raise any bills for agriculture consumption. During the implementation phase, farmers needed hand-holding with the filling of the forms, with submission of papers, and also there were several activities carried out by PSPCL to remove the barriers to enrollment, which I will describe a bit later. A very important part of the scheme implementation was the setting up of demo farms. Now, the farmer can earn cash incentive only if the on-farm water use goes down. And for this, the farmers can adopt water-efficient irrigation and agronomic practices. But they would first like to see these techniques being demonstrated successfully before they would like to adopt it. Therefore, we identified some progressive farmers which were connected on these feeders and convinced them to set up demo farms. So 17 demonstration farms have been functioning for the last more than a year now, and these have reported good water savings. In addition to the electricity meters, which are already installed as a part of the enrollment to the scheme, run hour meters are installed to measure the running hours of the pump, and water flow meters are also installed to measure the water consumption. The results have been encouraging, and across the 17 demo farms, water savings ranging from 12% to 13% have been seen. Another important part of these demo farms is the piloting of app-based remote pump operation devices. Now, agriculture supply, we know, is rostered, and often it is available to farmers during the night time. And therefore, farmers have a tendency to leave their pump sets on rather than go to the field at odd hours to switch off the pump set. With these devices, farmers are able to control the operation of the pump sets and save water. There were also certain challenges which were faced by PSPCL and the state officials when they were implementing this scheme, because this was the first time such a scheme was piloted. And generally, the strategy of farmer engagement, which was adopted, a more efficient way to do it is to have a community level engagement. But it was found that sometimes community meetings were getting disrupted due to certain individuals, and therefore that strategy had to be redesigned and one-on-one communication with farmers was required. Therefore, it was important here to note that a single communication strategy did not work across all the feeders, even though the area was very limited. And for each village, a different communication strategy had to be designed. When the enrollments were happening, we found that initially they picked up very well, but then gradually they plateaued out. TERI team contacted all of the 560 odd farmers on the 3 feeders and found that there were almost 15% farmers who wanted to enroll, but they could not do so because the name in the electricity connection was not the same as the name of the landowner. Also, there were some cases in which there were multiple owners for the same land, mostly siblings, whereas there was only one electricity connection and any cash incentive had to be shared by all of them, and they were not comfortable in it going to only one person's bank account. Third challenge was that Punjab has a very large number of NRI population, and they own land, and their lands are farmed by tenants. Now, these tenants to begin with were not eligible to enroll in the scheme or to receive the cash incentive. And therefore, they were not interested in enrolling. Now, with these challenges also, as we have mentioned before, that AMR meters had to be installed on the farmers. To begin with, there was some shortage of AMR meters. There were some technical issues around the collection of data from the AMR meters to the central database of PSPCL, because the field officials were not familiar with their operation. And these challenges have been gradually addressed by PSPCL, and order for the smart meters has been placed, and the field officials are being trained to do minor troubleshooting at the field itself. Another challenge was that the consumer records of farmers were sometimes outdated, and this affected the farmer outreach activity, and also the feeder level energy monitoring that Mr. Gulati referred to, that was also affected because the feeder level records were not updated. There was some delay in incentive payment, and this was due to a very interesting issue. The state had decided to use the existing subsidy budget to do the cash transfers also. So while the resources were available, it was found that the budget head which was being used for subsidy payment from the state government to PSPCL could not allow the cash transfer payment to happen to the farmer. And therefore, the state had to create a new budget head, which took some time. But now that has been done, and the cash incentive delay will not happen. While there was a delay going on because of this, PSPCL did make payment from their own resources, but those are limited. What we have seen in the last 2 years of supporting this scheme is that there is a need for a continuous engagement with consumers, which is very resource intensive. There are a lot of doubts to be clarified. They need handholding support to enroll. Once the enrollment application is submitted, the application has to be tracked. And then the farmers need to be constantly updated about their consumption, how much allocation they have used, how much savings they have achieved. And in case they have any problems with the scheme, they need to be able to communicate with somebody. Finally, the conclusions. There are four main conclusions that we have reached. And that is that the first is that regular communication with farmers and on-time transfer of cash incentive is very, very essential in order to maintain the interest and engagement of the farmer in the scheme and to have them to build their trust in the scheme. The second is that while the DBTE scheme will be administered by the DISCOM, a coordinated approach between power and agriculture is necessary. And the DBT scheme must be combined with sustainable agriculture initiatives, as was done in the case of the demo farms. The third thing is that adaptive management is necessary. When phase one of the scheme was announced with certain design, the state found that there were certain design changes like allowing tenants to enroll, having simplified processes for name change, allowing joint ownership of electricity connection with Punjab has now allowed by going to the regulator and amending the supply regulations. And this kind of design changes are necessary, and therefore the state needs to be flexible in its approach, and it needs to constantly take into account the feedback from the field and to review and revise the scheme. Last and the most important conclusion is that an electricity benefit delivery directly to agriculture, which is being considered very, very difficult. It is possible to implement a successful DBT program in agriculture, provided the design takes into account the local context, it takes into account farmers' concerns, and also supports the farmer with water saving techniques. Farmers are aware of the groundwater issue and they will adopt a solution if it maintains their earning potential and does not increase their risk. If the scheme is voluntary and entry and exit is easy, it is likely to find higher acceptability. With that, we come to an end of our presentation, but let us continue the discussion. Our email IDs are here. We will now move to the panel discussion, and I will request Dimitrios to please take over and introduce the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kavita ji. Thank you very much, Mohinder. Just as a reminder, we will have a discussion with our panelists, and I understand, and I have been seeing in the text here that we are receiving questions from various colleagues who have been attending this remotely. So please keep on sending your questions and answers. We will spend a little bit of time getting the experience from our panelists. But please send questions that you may have. I have seen a few that have popped up on the dialogue box here. And then we will try and distill some of those questions and address them at the end of the discussion. So let me, Mr. Sampath, thank you very much for joining us on this. I have been looking at the background of your biography, all the broad experiences that you have had with the government of India, from a district collector, financial institutions, power secretary, and at the end, you've been running the elections in India in the largest democracy in the world. You have an amazing experience and breadth throughout your career and your life. And thank you very much for helping us in the design of this scene, and thank you for joining this webinar. I would like to say that the issue of agricultural subsidies is not unique to India. In Europe, it's one of the most massive budgetary allocations that goes into agricultural subsidies. And agricultural subsidies in the United States are also massive as well. So it is not a new subject around the world that farmers are a powerful political body. They are numerous, they carry votes, and they have the responsibility for providing food for everyone. So they are a key constituency, not only in the economy, but in everyone's life. Now, as we discussed in the beginning, India has come a long way from dealing with malnutrition and lack of food. Now there is abundance of food, and the issue is more about how quickly water is depleting and how the policies that have been very successful in addressing food shortages are now creating difficulties both in the power sector and in the water sector. From your perspective, how do you think that each decision maker, the policy makers, how can they approach the farmers, which appears to be a difficult political situation, so that they can move into a more modern, more prudent way of applying, of using the water and farming more modern? What would be your views on that? Please, sir. Ask you to unmute your microphone. I believe I see that you're still muted here. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Demetrius, for the kind words you spoke. I have the privilege of having almost about 1/6 of my service as Power Secretary in Government of Andhra Pradesh, one of longest serving Power Secretaries. Actually, on an occasion like this, I have to compliment Mr. Venu Prasad and Government of Punjab for daring to take up this project. In all my experience, I have never seen any chief minister even to sit through with the discussions when we mention metering agriculture. Immediately subject will change, they will go to some other subject. Whereas it requires a lot of courage, both political and administrative, for a state like Punjab to take it up. But the only difference is we have been wanting to do metering with backdrop of the farmer being apprehensive that we may use the metering to collect more money from them in course of time. Because now, how much they are consuming, nobody knows. The moment there is a meter, we get some data about how much they are consuming. They have a fear, if not today, at some point of time, some government with a different philosophy will come and start collecting meter tariff. That is their fear. Whereas in the case of Punjab, they are metering to pay money to the farmers. This is not to collect money from them, to pay money to them. That way, it stands on a different footing. But even there, we could see in the first phase, not all, I think only about 30 to 40% of the farmers have got enrolled. In the second phase, for the reasons mentioned, percentage is only 5. But then Punjab is definitely the silver lining in finding the solution for this problem. It is in the interest of everyone. See that the Punjab experiment is executed properly, successfully, so that whole country can come, see what is happening. Farmers can come, see that metering is not a ruse to trap them into more and more recovery. It is actually something which will be beneficial to them. But this message is something which has to be seen, to be believed. It will happen when it is demonstrated effectively, successfully in one state, which is what we are trying to do. But even in the case of Punjab, I was rather perturbed to find that the World Bank is not associated with phase 2. I really do not think banks should just keep off from the phase 2. Phase 2 also must be within the association of the bank so that you do not lose track. Ultimately, When people come, they will not be visiting only phase 1 areas, they will be going to phase 2 areas also, see what is happening. If it is not implemented, it is not going to redound to the credit of the scheme. Nextly, farmers, as you know, not only in India, anywhere in the world, they suffer from a victimization complex. They think that the whole society is out to victimize them, whole society is out to exploit them. Like, for example, farmers in Andhra have always said that I am also an entrepreneur. Every other entrepreneur, like a toothpaste manufacturer, soap manufacturer, he fixes his own price, while I am not allowed to fix my price. Now, luckily, Government of India is stepping in. Some of the measures which they are taking, removing all curbs on the movement of the farm produce and doing away with the concept of procurement, etc. These things will definitely ratio, but this is one of the grievances of the farmers for decades. This is what they used to feel. Second thing, everybody knows that farming, not only in India, anywhere in the world, is not a viable proposition. It is not an economic proposition. Farmer is doing farming because he has been doing it. That is all the reason, and also because he cannot do anything else. Thirdly, he has got a land, he is saddled with it, he has to do something. Because of this, whatever he has got, like he has been getting, particularly fertilizers, urea at very low prices, almost just like agriculture power tariff, urea price has also remained frozen, except for some minor changes for the past 2-3 decades. Now, power tariff for agriculture power, and these are the things which they have hard won over a period of time. Whatever we do, whatever we are going to do, education or canvassing with the farmer to adopt new practices, all this will be at the back of their mind. They would not want to give it up. We have to give them assurance, reassurances that whatever we do will not be in the nature of whittling down the benefits which they are already getting. Challenge is going to be that if they have the slightest suspicion, they will not play ball with us. Yes.
Very much, Mr. Sanpat. I very much appreciate how you have been bringing the perspective of the farmers into our discussion. And I would like to come back to you with some more questions. If I may briefly now move to Mr. Baldev Singh San. Sir, you have been for more than 30 years working on the power sector. You were until recently the chairman of the power utilities in Punjab. And in many ways, it is the power utility that is in the front line of making sure that electricity is available in the rural areas. And if the way electricity is provided is creating losses in the utility, on the other hand, it becomes very difficult for you to keep on providing the power. I saw one of the questions that have popped up in our dialogue. People are asking, are you providing power all the time in rural areas? Is it intermittent? How do you deal with that? So I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, first of all, how big of a challenge it is for the utilities to provide electricity to the farmers? And then how big of a challenge you thought it was to actually start implementing the scheme through the pilot? If you could start by bringing the perspective a little bit from the utility on what we're facing here. Please, sir, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Definitely, the power to the agriculture sector in Punjab, it is around 25% of the total power which is being supplied to the agriculture sector And more difficult it is, out of this 25% of the power, 70% is provided, has to be delivered to the farmers during this paddy season only. During these only 3 months only, we have to give this 70% of this total power which the agriculture people use. So this makes more difficult for our utility, specifically in Punjab, which do not have much of the industry and other load. Even also commercial load is not much like other states, we being on the border side of the country. So really, with this agriculture load being very high, to the order of 4,000 megawatt is the agriculture load. During paddy season, we only provide 8 hour supply by rationalizing it and making 3 groups of all the agriculture feeders. We have around 6,500 agriculture feeders in our state, which are totally separated from other feeder, other load of domestic and all that. And we have divided them in 3 groups during this paddy season. And you will be surprised that due to summer season also coincides with our paddy season. So Punjab's demand during this summer season from June to September, it touches around 13,600 600 megawatts during this period. And thereafter it goes down to 5,000 or 6,000 megawatt, and even during the night it goes only to 3,000 megawatts only. So our load profile is a very difficult to handle. So we have to arrange so much of power during this paddy season, and then we have to deliver them around the clock for those 8 hours. So this is a big challenge. And apart from this section of farmers, we are giving 24-hour supply throughout the year without any power cut to the industry and to the domestic sector and the commercial sector. So this is the main challenge for the utility. So if somehow during this Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme or such other schemes, our this peaking load of agriculture is reduced, then it will benefit the company itself. So then we do not we have to purchase this power at higher costs even during this paddy season, and provide to them free of cost or at the subsidized rate. One more thing is also challenging to the this company, that the power, the subsidy being given by the government is under cross subsidy. Government is this subsidy being paid is 17% cross subsidy. 17% of the total cost is less cost is being paid by the government, and the in lieu of this, other consumers, our industrial and commercial consumers are loaded on account of this. So due to this cross subsidy, other consumers are also suffering. So regarding, so this is the overall challenge within our state due to this agriculture load. And further the challenge is this, okay, every year the farmers are installing higher capacity motors due to deepening of the water. And that too, because due to their conditions or due to their unionism or all these reasons, because they are considering, as far as electricity is concerned, they are considering it free. So they are installing their motors at their own without even informing the utility that they have increased the load. And that is resulting to the damage to our distribution transformer also. Even utility does not know that the farmer has increased the capacity from 10 horsepower to 20 horsepower. So, so this is another challenge due to this agriculture sector, that because they are not used to pay for this electricity. So even they are increasing at their own, and that is a really big challenge for our this utility to save our distribution transformer. If this scheme goes in the right way, really this scheme has a very noble mission. So this is the strength of this scheme, that it is a very noble mission of saving the water. Apart from saving this electricity, but the people can be convinced, rather than saving the subsidy or like that, if because water or particularly the groundwater is limited, so it cannot be. We also try to convince the people that we can bring the power from other states. Any amount of power we can bring for you from other states. There is no shortage of power in India or in Punjab. But we cannot bring the water to you from other states, or particularly the groundwater we cannot bring for you. So we try to convince the farmers that more than our power, more than the government subsidy, it is the water which is more precious and you should save that water. So hopefully with this idea everybody is convinced, and really the farmers are willing to participate in this scheme. Specifically, this is a win-win situation for them. If they save, they will get something. If they do not save, they will not be charged anything. So this is a very good scheme. But the one thing I would like to really comment upon this scheme, that the electricity which has been allocated to them monthly, on the monthly basis, that has been allocated on the basis of the average of a particular feeder. But I see that each farmer does not own equal amount of land. So some farmers only own only 2 acres of land. Some may be owning 5 acres of land. So if a 2-acre farmer also gets the same amount of electricity, the electricity in his account in the same way, so he will be getting unnecessarily more subsidy. What I say, instead of saving the water, because he has only 2 acres of land or 2.5 acres of land. So this electricity allocation, I think it should be linked with the acreage of land also, so that we get more benefits out of it instead of subsidy also. And one thing, someone was talking that in the long run it may lead to pilferage of electricity and all that, bypassing of meters and all that. This is also another challenge in this scheme. And also one thing is also there, in Punjab, there are 14.5 lakh these connections, and every 5 acre, I can say, they are having the motors. There are many number of motors in Punjab. So as all the farmers are not participating in this scheme, so really they can shake hands that I will use water from your motor, your agriculture sector, this pump. You do not opt for this scheme, and from my this I will opt for this scheme, and we will not use water, and they will use more water from that another connection. So one thing also, this also needs to be taken care of in the long run. And next, one thing I would like to say, because last year what we saw, that the usage of the water or usage of the electricity directly is linked with the monsoon rains. So in the year when last year there were good rains, and overall there was a reduction of consumption per horsepower throughout the Punjab. So I think if in the long run, because slowly and slowly we have to improve upon this scheme. So if this should also, if some way it could be linked with the rainfall also, the allocation should also be linked with the rainfall also. that will make this scheme more incentive.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sran. If I wanted to make a quick time check, could someone confirm for me, because with the time difference, just want to make sure that I'm following the program correctly, how much more time we have for this webinar?
We started a bit late, Dimitrios, so I think we have another 20 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kavitaji. So I would like now to move on to Dr. Rajesh Vasist, who is with the Agricultural University in Punjab and has deep expertise in the groundwater issues and has been working in the direct benefit transfer initiative for electricity with our team. And I would like to ask you, sir, I mean, you have been monitoring the groundwater in Punjab, and I would like, first of all, to ask you, is the situation really difficult, or how much time do you think Punjab has before things get really hard? That is one question. And then the second question I have is, what are your lessons from the experience and the pilot so far? What do you feel has worked? What do you feel can be done better in the scheme? And what is the role of the knowledge of the university, of the scientists as we move ahead? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dimitrios. Thanks for having me as a panelist. First of all, let me correct you. I am with Department of Agriculture Punjab, not with the Agriculture University. But we closely coordinate with the Punjab Agricultural University. And the Department of Agriculture Punjab and the Punjab Agriculture Universities, these are working in tandem to address the issues of the farmers. Now, your first question was regarding the groundwater situation. We have been monitoring groundwater since 1973, when the Green Revolution was at peak. The average decline at present is to the tune of 60 centimeters per annum. So that means we are having a depletion rate which far exceeds the recharge of the groundwater. More than 109 blocks have been categorized as overexploited from groundwater point of view. There are certain areas which have been included in the phase 2 of the Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme, like districts of Sangrur, Barnala, Patiala, Moga. So these districts have a depletion rate of more than 1 meter per annum. Now the situation is difficult, but it may become worse if we do not take any corrective measures at this time. You see, as per the recent studies conducted by Department of Agriculture Punjab, Department of Water Resources and Central Groundwater Board, we have mapped the aquifers of Punjab. And as per these studies, we have approximately 300 billion cubic meter of water at the depth of 300 meters. At present, our maximum tube wells for irrigation are installed at a depth of 100 meters only. But in case we look at the withdrawal, we are withdrawing approximately 14.20 BCM per annum, excessive than the recharge. So in case you multiply, so we have a storage of 25 years approximately, in case we keep on withdrawing water like this only. So the learnings and the knowledge we gain from this Paani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme, when the scheme was discussed and it was being conceptualized, honestly, we were not very much convinced. Since when you look at the scheme from the perspective of the farmers, so they did not have much incentive to participate in this. But as the scheme was being designed and as the design evolved, we got convinced that this is the only way to address the issues. And we had a very pleasant experience with the farmers. Farmers slowly, with their knowledge, since farmer is also a scientist, and he works in the fields, and day-to-day problems are encountered by himself only. So we learned a lot from the farmers, but whatever knowledge we had and whatever exposure we had, that was shared. And the World Bank team, along with JPOL, was really instrumental in successful implementation of the scheme at the pilot stage. Only 15% target was given to us to enroll the farmers, but that far exceeded, and we could enroll 30% farmers. As Mr. Saran touched upon one point, that rainfall is a major factor for the use of groundwater as well as electricity consumption. So I think we need to increase the density of weather stations, because agromet advisory can really help us here, because now we are having very good advisory, very good like forecast from the meteorological department and other agencies working in this field. So in case we can intimate the farmers that you are going to have rain and they need not irrigate their fields, so that will really help in this scheme. So the incentives can increase and the use of groundwater will decrease. So I think this can lead to a sustainable model. The second learning which we consider is very important is the perspective of the farmers. You see, they're willing to adopt to the new technologies being given to them. They are ready to experiment with the state-of-the-art technologies like IoT and the remote switching devices which were tried. So we need to scale up those. And community participation is another area where we need to look into, because only farm level interventions may not be really helpful. They can help to a certain extent, but we need to increase it and scale it up to the community participation. But community participation needs a certain specific intervention and financial support as well from the government. Because you see, whatever interventions are being given, so these need to develop some confidence among the communities. And we need to look towards the problem in totality, right from sowing to the marketing. It has to be looked as a complete chain, and the value addition and the marketing aspects also need to be looked into and discussed with the farmers and propagated. And the buyers and the players need to find some footing, because volumes have to be there in case they have to come into the market. So, so that their handling charges or whatever procurement they want to do is viable for them. So I think with this, I'll rest here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. And just to summarize, I think we had some really good insights. I appreciate the comments that interventions are needed at the community level, but also individual farmers need to be convinced personally, because it is their livelihood and their operations that are to be affected. I take the point about the importance on getting good weather data and being able to integrate this into the scheme. And the point that you made, that farmers are really quite open to consider new technologies. They're open to working with more advanced methods of agriculture. Let me briefly do a check and see if we have questions that are coming from the audience that maybe we can address to the panelists or to our colleagues from the World Bank. Just a quick check with Mohinder. Any questions that you have received in writing that you feel we should be addressing?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Dimitrios. Yes, there are a few questions that have come up from the audience. And let me see who can respond to those questions. One question is about the intermittent supply. In the farm supply, even though it says 7 hours or 8 hours, is it intermittent and does it get interrupted? That is one question. And I guess that is for Mr. Saran. And the second question also perhaps is for Mr. Saran. About the subsidy, that if the if the farmer is given an incentive of 4 rupees for electricity saving, what is the benefit to the government? And does the utility get the subsidy from the government, the difference between what is paid to the farmer and what is the cost of supply? Does the power utility get this subsidy from the government or not? So maybe these are two questions for Mr. Saran. And then I think Kavita can speak to how this remote operation device is helping overcome the challenges of the intermittent supply. Over to you, Mrs. Saran.
Regarding this agriculture supply, we are giving 8 hours supply during this paddy season, and this is continuous without any interruption. The supply is given for 8 hours, and only interruption is when there is some fault due to some this thunderstorm or due to some winds. Sometimes these trees fall on our lines or something like that. Only for that reason the supply may be interrupted, but normally the supply is given uninterrupted for 8 hours continuously as per a standard schedule, and that schedule is already given in advance. We have divided all the feeders in 3 groups, and after every 4 days we are changing their timing, day, then evening, then night. So supply is uninterrupted for 8 hours, and only interruption may be due to some fault in a particular feeder or like that. Regarding this subsidy, the government is paying. Last year the rate was 528, but the regulator has decided rupees 5 and 28, and this time it is rupees 5.60 paisa or something like that. So if the farmer saves 1 unit, he gets rupees 4, and government saves rupees 1.60 also. So this is saving for the government if 1 unit of electricity is saved by the farmer. So regarding this, government is saving there. Due to this saving, this company does not get any saving, but anyhow, because as the burden of subsidy on the government reduces, so government shall be able to pay us the full subsidy. Regarding this, we are getting the subsidy from the government on the feeder basis only. The meters are put at the are installed in the grid substation at the feeder, and whatsoever the energy is pumped in all the 6,500 feeders, we sum up that and multiply with that 5.6 or whatsoever the rate is decided by the regulator. We get the total subsidy from the government on that account, after accounting for the this distribution losses in the feeders. Hope it is clear to everyone.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Saran. Kavitaji, do you want to talk about this remote control device, which helps in dealing with the inconvenient schedule of the night supply, and also if there are sometimes interruptions, unintended, but interruptions do happen. So how does that help deal with this issue of interruptible supply?
Yeah, so these remote operation devices come with an app, and they are able to indicate to the farmer the status of availability of supply, and the farmer is also able to set the number of hours of irrigation that is required. So for example, the farmer knows that they have to water their field for 5 hours. They will feed that into the app, and if the supply goes off after 2 hours and then comes back again after 30 minutes, this 2 hours will be added, and so the total hours of pump operation will be 5 as the supply comes and goes. So in short, this is how it is, but these remote devices are very freely available. They are available on all the e-commerce platforms, and we can go and take a look at them.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions at this stage, Mohinder?
No, nothing more from the audience.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to take a few more minutes before we close on this, I was wondering if I can turn back to Mr. Sampath and ask you. We have learned a lot of lessons on the pilot. I think there are lessons about how to approach the farmers, some technical issues that needs to be resolved, issues about registration, and we're also getting some initial indications that actually farmers are open to these things, and the ones who have taken over to the scheme appear to be quite satisfied. I wanted to ask you, if we want to scale this up and grow it further, and you did mention in your points.
So you are muted.
Can I ask you to unmute your microphone again, please?
At bureaucratic
Thank
level,
you very much.
Yeah. And at bureaucratic level, normally they will be apprehensive to touch this kind of things because agri-meter is a taboo. They would not want even to take it to a chief minister. So when the World Bank could seek some time, either with the chief minister or with the power minister of the state, before that, prepare the officers concerned. They should also be prepared. But then any kind of an initiative to look at meter-related issues will happen only when political leadership is inclined to consider that. If not, because I have seen in states, even some leak coming in the media that there is a talk of introducing meters, that will create reaction. So the politician has to be prepared and initiative has to be taken at the level of politician after preparing bureaucracy about the advantages of the scheme. That's it.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. So if I can request, I know that we have some written material and a paper that describes the scheme, and the presentation can also be made available. So just before closing this session now, so that we stay on time, can I please ask you, if possible, to put up in the screen the email contacts of Kavita ji and Mohinder Gulati, so that people can write to you directly if they want to get. Thank you very much. So these are the email contacts for Mr. Mohinder Gulati and Mrs. Kavita Saraswat. We have a paper that describes the scheme in some detail.
Hello?
And we can make the slides available to everyone who wishes to get some more details.
No, Abhi, I am still on a webinar.
So if I turn back to you, to Mr. Saxena, so that we can close the session. From my perspective, I would like to thank you all for your participation. I would like to thank everybody who has been attending remotely on the web, and I wish you a very good evening in India. And I'm really looking forward to the time when we will be able to start flying again, so that I can visit and hopefully see you all closer in person and visit Punjab and see how the scheme is going into the ground. Back to you, Mr. Saxena, for the closing.
Mr. Saxena, before you come in, may I take a minute?
Sure, Mr. Gulati, please.
There are a few more questions that have just popped up. We will not go into that, but I would just like to inform everybody that the questions that have now popped up and we haven't been able to respond, we will be responding to all those questions through an email, and we'll provide you more detailed answers. Also, Dimitrios and others, there's one more issue that I think has not been asked but would be relevant to raise here, at least briefly. DBTE is one approach for trying to address this energy, water, agriculture nexus challenge. The other thing is that the Government of India has recently announced a scheme for solarizing the agricultural feeders, which is called Kusum scheme. and that has these three components, which is Kusum A, B, and C, and Kusum C scheme, which is replacing the electricity tube wells by solarizing these tube wells, which is replacing the electric pumps with the solar pumps and grid-connected solar pumps. That is one scheme. Other is that those who don't have a connection but need energy for irrigation, there is an off-grid that they can get a solar pump which is not connected to grid, but they can use it for irrigation. And there is a government scheme which provides about 60% of subsidy. And then there is a third component of that scheme, which is that at the substation level, a large solar power plant can be installed. This could be through private sector or through a public-private partnership model, or even with the DISCOM can do it. How does that juxtapose or compare with the DBTE scheme, and how these two schemes can be dovetailed? So if we can have a couple of minutes on that discussion. Mr. Saxena, is it okay? Do we still have a few minutes for this?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Gulati, please.
Okay. Okay, and Dimitrios, since the bank is involved in both, would you like to react to that?
Mohinder, I have to say that my first reaction is that we need to have a separate webinar on that, because it really is a remarkable scheme. And my perspective, yes, Mr. Sran, I saw you raising your hand. I'm ready to come to you. So I really believe we need a separate webinar on that, because I think there are issues of excess supply that is sometimes the case in some places in India. But on the other hand, the fact of the matter is that we have seen remarkable reductions in the costs of solar energy, especially in India lately, and massive scale. So my first kind of reaction is that I think we need a separate webinar on this, and I think it merits it. But let me ask Mr. Sran, who wanted to come in, for his quick comment.
My quick correction to this thing is that when we will be having standalone pump sets with solar pumps, they will get the supply throughout the day for 8 hours daily. So that will lead to more exploitation of water. We need to check over that, because then they will be getting during winter also, during otherwise also, during summer also, they will be getting at least assured 8 or 10 hours supply during the day. And naturally, because it will be costing anything, because you have installed the solar and there is no fuel cost. So the farmers will operate it throughout the day. It will be a more exploitation of the water. One should see to that. For that, I suggest that some water meters must be installed on the solar pumps, and there should be some charges on the water if it is used excess of that. Secondly, also, dealing with this power sector, I have also one doubt about this solarization of the grid connected agriculture pumps. As a India, and really as a state also, by state also, we have already tied up and installed the capacity basis on our agriculture load also. So from other solar also, from other hydro plants also, from coal-based plants also. So when we will install extra, because my state has 25% of the power is being used for this agriculture only. So if all the agriculture farmers will get these solar plants, then those installed capacity will go waste. And those capital investment which has been already done, it will go waste, and it will burden the remaining consumers, because for that we have to pay the capacity charges and all that. So really, as a country, we have to think before going like this 100% solarization of agriculture pumps. One, for the sake of saving our water, and secondly, not loading the other consumers, because then all the available capacity will be parked to them. Those are my comments on this issue, please.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
obviously we need a separate webinar on this, more detailed webinar.
I think really we should plan for a separate event on this. I think it is a very interesting subject. There are different pieces of it. And of course, the issue is that we want to help the farmer to go from farming to start making income from the electricity. And it is the income of the electricity that then hopefully will lead into the saving of the water. But I appreciate the comment. And this is an India government scheme. We have been studying it. So maybe let's try to arrange a separate event on this. I'm sure there is a lot of interest, so we can discuss it in much more detail. So thank you very much again. Back to you, Mr. Saxena, for the closing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to close of a very, very informative and interesting webinar about a noteworthy initiative to save water in the state of Punjab. We had a full 360-degree view of the scheme from the perspective of the state government, state power utility, agriculturists, implementers, as well as distinguished experts. I would like to thank all the participants for attending the webinar, and in particular, Mr. V.S. Sampath, Mr. Venu Prasad, Mr. Sran, Dr. Vashisht, Mr. Dimitrios, Mr. Mohinder Gulati, Mrs. Kavita Saraswat, and Dr. Ajay Mathur for sparing their valuable time and giving us very, very clear impressions which could be factored while moving forward. I would also like to thank the entire team of the World Bank, SMAP, and DFID for supporting the project. SMAP has supported the activity, and DFID has supported the impact evaluation part of the project. TERI, IT Power, and PAU also need to be complimented for their efforts in this project. Last but not the least, the TERI IT team thanks are due to them for efficiently organizing the webinar. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We now come to a close of this session. Thanks a lot. We look forward to meeting you in some other webinar some other day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Webinar. Thank you.